will go ahead and also start recording. I will boot up the game, chat. We'll boot up the Vigi game. The Gooner game. Goonin game. How's everyone's day going so far today? I figured I'd put on a little chill lo-fi for this. I kind of just want to talk, kind of hang out while we do this. Not going to be a super long stream today because my sleep schedule has been all fucked. And I'm starting to feel the health effects for it because I'm old now. So we gotta pay attention to that stuff, and that means bedtime is at 7:30 tonight. Hi, Arna. Welcome in. How's your day going so far today, huh? There's been a lot of stuff happening on the whole Gooner censorship Visa MasterCard front. As well as just other stuff culturally that I feel like kind of ties in. And I think it's worth talking about. So we're going to do the stream, and I'm going to chop it up later tonight or tomorrow. And go from there. Get it all chopped up and talk about it. Turn it into a slop video. That's what. Fuck, I'm slow tonight. Also, let me know how the volume is. I think it should be okay, but like, you know, if the music is a little too loud or something. A little birdie told you we're streaming about Gooners. Not a little kitty? But yeah, I am streaming about Gooners. I'm streaming about all kinds of stuff, actually. I just, I don't know, feel like it's, let's go with that for now. I feel like it's kind of important. I feel like it's worth talking about. So that's what we're going to do. Give me a quick second here, chat, just while I get everything set up. And then I'll launch into my tirade. I hope you like the music. I found this channel on YouTube a little while ago. They're called Tokyo Lo-Fi. They're on Spotify too. And I really like their lo-fi music. For some reason, I feel like it's kind of hard to get like good lo-fi. You know, that's like actually relaxing. It feels like a lot of time people just like put in some anime clips, like anime voice clips from like fucking Cowboy Bebop and Dragon Ball Z, and then just like, you know, put in the little psst, 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 you know, like a bass kick and a little scratchy sound, and just call it good. And I don't like that. Fellow skin, and I probably don't have to play on the lowest graphic settings, but I kind of worry about fucking with it too much. So, chat, let's get into it. Pessoa, welcome in. Yeah, we're talking about Gooners, all kinds of stuff. It's important, Pessoa. It like legitimately it is. Especially you coming from South America, you'd think you'd be very familiar with American mega corporations and monopolies enforcing their extra legal moral philosophies on other people through direct and indirect violence without the sanction of the US government. You know, like the Banana Wars. Not that I ever think they hit Brazil, but, you know, some of your neighbors. I know Gooners. Yeah, everyone knows Gooners. Those guys that go, "It's the bit!" Oh, we didn't want to come to this map. We wanted Vespers. But, so, I figured it was kind of important and worth talking about. Because there's been a lot going on. Chat. And I haven't really talked about it because it changes so fast And every time I start to get fired up and like ready to go, I feel like, oh, it's all over. You know, the conversation's dead now. And then it comes back with a vengeance because somebody else does something stupid or something new. Because what we're going to be talking about today is all about the whole... It all centers around the whole Visa MasterCard thing that's been going on. Americans hate all people who speak Spanish regardless of their country. Well, you forget we were once British. They'll always be called Mexican illegal immigrants. Well, lucky for you, Pessoa, you don't speak Spanish. But yeah, talking about Visa MasterCard and everything like that, chat, because it's important, and I've had a hard time like keeping up with it as a content creator. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do this stream, and like I was saying, we'll chop it together after the fact to turn into a slop video, because I don't know, I think it's important. It's gonna be kind of a little bit of a nuanced take because it's complicated. Let's get into it, right? So to start off, I kind of want to establish my position in all this, my dog in this fight, right? So to be clear, chat, I got two things going on here, right? I'm an American, and I'm fairly conservative American, so I believe in upholding a lot of like the constitutional rights of Americans. And as far as I'm concerned, to whatever degree we can for even non-American citizens, you know, I feel like if they're using an American service, they should still be allowed American rights. So I feel like it is not the place of anybody to, and I shouldn't call them American rights, they're God-given rights. But like what we in the United States would call constitutional rights, so like your First Amendment, your Second Amendment, stuff like that. Any kind of violation or obstruction of that, to me, is like, it's abhorrent. You know, it's gross, it's despicable. I don't like it when, you know, the Brits are getting jailed or anything like that, you know, for like their speech. I don't like hearing about Australians having like gun roundups and stuff like that. Just to kind of establish my position. But that said, I'm not an absolutist. You know, I'm actually relatively authoritarian in like my beliefs. I'm pretty willing and comfortable with the idea of using the cudgel of state violence to achieve my means, or to achieve, you know, what I think is right. Because and it's important to establish, because the whole collective shout thing and Visa MasterCard, all of that stems from freedom of speech, right? Because there's a couple things going on. We got Visa and MasterCard in most places doing, and what they're doing is they're latching down on everyone's freedom of speech. But then simultaneously, we have the UK government with their Online Safety Act, which on paper is to keep, you know, to make it more difficult for kids to access pornography. Now, to be clear, chat, I think pornography is... I think it's a bad thing. I basically think of it like in the same terms that I would think of cocaine, right? And that's pretty accurate because they've done chemical studies, and it affects the human brain in similar ways. Now, that said, I don't think that pornography should necessarily be fully illegal, but I do think it should be harder for children to get a hold of. You know, I think we should treat it like alcohol, like tobacco, and we should make a concerted effort to keep young, impressionable minds from accessing these sorts of things. The problem is what the UK government is doing with the Online Safety Act, and what tech bros and, you know, tech companies are utilizing the Online Safety Act as an excuse for, is a opportunity to implement universal internet ID. So basically, they want to get away. They want to completely destroy the vaunted internet tradition of anonymous shitposting, being able to make, you know, actionable bomb threats against the government or whatever without really having any kind of reprisal or consequences. You know, without being at risk of getting that. Sorry, I just looked at chat and it totally threw me off. Arna, I never said I wasn't a hypocrite. Listen here. Look, listen. I never said I'm not a hypocrite. And I never said I don't indulge in what I think of as a party drug. I just think that if you're being responsible with it, you treat it like cocaine, where it's once in a while to, you know, get a particular type of dopamine hit. But if you start needing it to, like, get through the day, you know, if you're taking multiple bumps a day every day regularly, that's not healthy. You have like 4 terabytes in a secret folder called Do Not Click. Well, first of all, it's not called Do Not Click. Second of all, it's not 4 terabytes. It's like 4 gigabytes. And again, I don't think that is a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing, and specifically, chat, from like a perspective of individual liberty, I think as adults, it is absolutely your right to decide if you want to drink, if you want to smoke, if you want to jack off to porn. That's your business. That's your decision to make, right? My position is entirely informed and based around the relatively unknown quote, and I don't know why, because, well, I do know why. It's because it's despicable. But there's this quote they got from the Pornhub CEO, who got, like, hot mic'd by Project Veritas or some shit, who literally said, like, our goal is to get boys addicted to pornography as early as possible. That's disgusting, and I think it should be... That's where I come from when I say you know, like, Texas having, like, a porn ban that makes it so that Pornhub effectively cannot operate in their state. Good. It sucks as far as, like, you know, the government enacting tyranny, don't get me wrong, but we're talking about tyrannizing people who are trying to get kids addicted to what is effectively a narcotic. The problem is, right, UK government and all them, they're using it as a cloak to basically increase the scope of the surveillance state. Also, Pessoa, jack-offs is slang for masturbate. They're using it as a cloak to increase the surveillance state, and that's a problem. Now, the solution I see thrown around a lot is that, oh, well, we actually need to go, like, full absolutist libertarian about it, and everything needs to be okay. I'm pro-porn age verification, but I think they're doing it wrong, Arna. I think there should be an age verification involved, but I don't think it necessarily needs to go any further than a porn site requiring you to create an account and register a credit card or some shit in order to verify that you are over the age of 18. It's literally the same thing OnlyFans does. Like, OnlyFans already does this, not just with their creators, but with consumers, where you can't subscribe to an OnlyFans page without creating an account, obviously. And you can't create an account without registering a credit card or a, you know, a Visa card or a debit card, right? Something like that. And then what they do is they charge it 10 cents and then immediately refund the charge, basically to verify that it's a good card. But the other thing that does is, as far as, like, you know, keeping it out of the hands of children, now it's on paper. You know, it's going to be on mommy and daddy's credit card bill that little Billy tried to register their credit card on OnlyFans. I think that should be done across the board. Now, obviously, it's not something you can feasibly do everywhere, right? Certain services, like social media, right? Places like Twitter, Reddit, Discord, it's not really feasible to keep porn off of and, you know, protect the children. We're not talking about... Again, it's really important that we bring this to the analogy of alcohol, right? And policy as far as, like, you know, alcohol sales. You have to be 21 or older to buy alcohol. You say porn should be legalized. Pornhub has a home tab. Are you 18 plus? And everyone ignores it. It's not like the police are going to show up and arrest you for lying. Well, so in the UK, now they can. In a lot of states in the United States, they're forcing Pornhub to put in stricter age verification measures, which is fine. And what I find very telling is the fact that when they pass those laws, Pornhub then just pulls service from that state. That means they know a significant number of their consumer base, of their clientele, are children. Right? If I pass the stop drowning puppies in your bathtub law, the person who gets mad and says they're going to move to Canada is probably the person who's drowning puppies in their bathtub. Probably. It's not 100%, right? It's not a totally effective way, but throw a stone into a crowd of dogs and the one that cries out is the one that got hit. That kind of mentality. I'm getting off topic though, because I'm here to preach moderation, chat. I'm not saying that we need... Well, strictly speaking, I would be very happy with an internet license, because I don't think kids should be on the internet, period. I don't think it's a safe environment for them. I don't think it's healthy for their mental development. And I find that it generally degrades the quality of content on the internet to have children on that. I think because children are part of the internet consumer base, it degrades the overall quality of the internet and the entertainment on the internet. So I would be all for that sort of thing, but it's not feasible. And because it's not feasible, right, we have to be real. Just play the game and stop talking. No, Pisso, the point is the talking. The point is the talking. The talking is the important part. I know it's hard because I'm rambling. Like, in my videos, I script heavily, and I follow that script because I have a very hard time working unscripted. It's just not necessarily my strong suit, unless I've rehearsed. So where am I? Right. Okay. So the problem is... basically, the problem is we're not ready for what needs to be done. So, like, the most realistic thing that we can do for, like, online children's safety, as far as, like, you know, keeping them away from pornography and everything like that. Damn, Arna over here writing the Bible in my chat. I will get to that in a minute. I feel like the most feasible thing to do is to just follow the OnlyFans model, right? Now, chat, to be clear, I don't like OnlyFans, okay? I think they're bad people. But I think they have a great age verification methodology. It's pretty much one-for-one the way I would do it. When I eventually launch my own Discord server, it is, in effect, what I intend to do as part of a method to keep kids off my Discord server. It's pretty foolproof. Arna, I will read that message just as soon as I finish up this boss fight. Or, well, this mission, in effect. Ah! But the problem is, because it's kind of a spicy topic, everyone's only taking extreme positions. Like, one of the positions I've heard was honestly incredibly disappointing was this creator who I kind of liked, who was basically saying, no, police your own kids. And I don't think he was doing it on purpose. He is ESL, but it low-key almost sounded like he was advocating for, like, CP should be allowed on the internet. Which is just like, wow, that's just bad. Not my position at all. Alright, Arna's message. Chat, this is not me talking. This is my friend and longtime chatter, my very good friend, my collaboration partner, my technical advisor, my manager. I feel like a much more reasonable explanation than they are preying on children is implementing age verification process. Ah, right. This is in response to the fact that I I think that this is in response to me saying that if a state government tells you that you have to start implementing age verification on your site and your response is to pull your verification, I think that shows that you know and are maliciously preying upon children as part of your customer base. Now, saying preying upon is kind of weird. It's preying upon the same way a drug dealer from a Dare ad you saw in middle school is preying upon children, right? They're not really preying upon them without getting into conspiracy theory territory. They're not going, yeah, we're gonna ruin these kids' lives with porn. They're more so going like, holy shit, we can make a killing off of ad revenue from people watching our porn site, and kids are doing that more of all, right? It's simple supply and demand. This is her response. I feel like a much more reasonable explanation than they are preying on children, not my words, is implementing age verification processes to meet these new laws is extremely expensive, and with each state law, it's all different. So I can, from a business perspective, understand pulling out of a region until they can, 1, develop an age verification process, and 2, wait and see what laws are passed to determine what exactly needs to be developed. And that would be true, Arna, if that's what they were doing. But they're not pulling out to develop the methods, right? Because what it always is these states aren't saying, like, you need to develop this right now or else you're going to get, sued into the dirt. What they're doing is they're passing laws where they say, like, hey, you need to say that you're going to start doing this and basically make it happen within a certain period of time. And if you don't, then we're going to have to, start pursuing legal action. And what sites like Pornhub do specifically Pornhub did in response is they pulled their support and they have a pop-up message saying, hey, because of this law, you can't access porn in this region. Here's how you can vote to remove the law. They're not trying to find a way to comply to the law. It's not that the law is too expensive. They are straight up against the law. Right? They're just like anti-law that's... Again, it's you can't drown puppies in bathtubs. Guys, we need to vote against, the head of the Stop Drowning Puppies in Bathtubs party. Why do you care so much about that? Like, that is... You gotta understand, Pornhub is not in the business of telling people how to vote politically. Until it starts affecting their business when governments say, hey, we need you to do a better job about, not peddling porn to kids. Getting off topic, though, right? Everyone wants to go in the direction of one extreme or the other. They either want total, 1996 Internet 1.0 non-regulated internet, where you just have everything, you're just going to stumble across, like, actual hardcore CSAM material sometimes, and, if you get mad about it, ho-ho, that's the joke. Or they want literal 1984 Big Brother, Victorian England, like, total sexual repression internet. I feel like both of those are bad. And the problem is, because both sides keep getting more and more extreme, there is an easy middle ground, but nobody wants to go there. Visa and MasterCard basically want to just stop supporting digital sexuality. By that I mean stuff with, like, hentai, porn video games, everything like that. Anything not starring a real-life porn star, they want to stop supporting. Which is a weird place to draw the line, but whatever. Collective Shout views all pornographic content as violence against women and want it banned on those grounds. Hardcore, ultra-right-wing Christian nationalists like Melanie Mack want porn banned because God says so, which, on the one hand, okay, based. On the other hand, the definition they're using is not a feasible definition for a legal ban. And then on top of that, you've got the massive amount of push from the West that's just anti-anime. Which is its own thing. I don't understand why the West has such a problem with Asians making stuff. Specifically in the entertainment sphere, because it's like, bro, the cartoon market isn't a net It's not a net zero. It's not a zero-sum game. Wait, you still haven't done the Abyss Intercept yet? No, it's hard. It's been like 2 years. Yeah, but it's hard. You know what else is hard? My mom! But so, what I want to preach here is prudence, right? I want to preach, like, we should chill out in both directions. And part of the reason for this is one of the things I've seen is, as, like, the more quote-unquote woke, I don't like using that word, I'd say Marxist, disruptionist, left-wing politics infected more and more of media and gaming, more and more the right-wing position became pro-sexuality. And it's starting to get to the point where it's a little bit absurd. Where it's getting to the point where you have games like First Descendant, games like Stellar Blade, games like Mecha Break, that are basically blowing up because they're very sexualized games, which is, like, fine, but then it starts to feel like they take things a little bit too far, where people are like, oh, this game's so based. Like, Mecha Blade is so based because it doesn't have ugly women. It's like, yeah, okay, but is the in-game pole dancing animation really necessary? Like, don't get me wrong, I like it. I see it and I go, oh, ooga booga, neuron activation. But, is it good? Should we celebrate that that's there? Should we celebrate that that's a thing in these games? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that there is a line that can be too far, and I think we should be careful about not crossing that line. This is Arna's clarifying question. You're super anti-Visa MasterCard, especially because of the collective shout, but your solution is using a card for age verification instead of a government ID, so it'd be giving these companies even more power than it currently has. Well, yeah, so how do I explain this? Okay, so I had to put it on an animation so I can talk. This is a multifaceted issue, right? When I'm talking about Visa Master, having to use a credit card to verify you're over the age of 18, that is in response, that is the solution to the problem of basically preventing children from accessing pornography on the internet. Strictly speaking, that is what that is. The Visa MasterCard thing is a different thing. It's not Visa MasterCard cracking down on porn. The problem isn't the porn. Because if you look at the stuff they're cracking down on, it's the rape simulator game, which I don't have a problem with that not being accessible. I think that's bad and gross and morally reprehensible. It's all these games on Steam that are like incest related, sisterly lust. They say underage, but Steam's very strict on that. That wouldn't be the case. And my problem with those games is, A, I think they're gross, but B, they're low-quality shovelware that I don't think should be on Steam because it's low-quality shovelware. The problem with the Visa MasterCard thing isn't that, oh, they're cracking down on pornography. The problem is they are a unelected oligarchical duopoly that is affecting soft power force on our God-given rights as Americans, but as humans in general. They are using this as a doorway. They're cracking down on porn today, but tomorrow it's going to be something else. It's not that my problem isn't that they're cracking down on porn. My problem is they're cracking down on freedom of expression. And I don't think that, especially in unelected financial power, should be able to dictate what I do with my freedom of speech. Okay? Visa and MasterCard are payment processors. So I think they should shut the fuck up and process the payments and let me say whatever I fucking want. Anything else is just tyranny of the corporation. And that's part of why they've gotten such strong pushback. It is a bipartisan issue that a unelected corporate entity should not be able to dictate our rights to us. Amazon should not be able to tell me whether or not I'm allowed to own a gun. Visa and MasterCard should not be able to tell me what things I'm allowed to say. But you want to use them instead of something like a government ID to be the gatekeeper of access to sensitive materials. Yes, I want to utilize their services as payment processors. They are no longer acting as payment processors. They are starting to act as governments and moral arbitrators. They are a monopolistic force. A monopolistic force is a... And it doesn't have to be specifically Visa, MasterCard. It can be any payment processor. The purpose that needs to be fulfilled with what I'm asking... You gotta understand, these are two unrelated issues, Arna. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little heated. Let me tone down, because I'm trying to convert you guys, not win. These are unrelated topics. Visa and MasterCard are the solution to the government ID thing, because the problem there is I need porn to be inaccessible to children without me having an internet license. The way you verify that I'm over the age of 18 without putting me in a government database or something like that is you just charge me $1 so that my credit card bill, any credit card, even if it's fucking shit card by Elon Musk, I don't care. My credit card bill needs to say $1 charge to XXX super hardcore big booby milfs.com. So that way, if I'm an underage person who stole mommy or daddy's credit card to do that, I, as mommy and daddy, can then see that and can decide whether or not I'm going to parent my own child. My solutions are imperfect, and they're deliberately imperfect, because a perfect solution is a totalitarian solution, and if you try to enact a totalitarian solution, you're just going to get a equally extreme pushback from the people you're trying to regulate. And this is why I have prohibition in the title. This is a good segue. During Prohibition, the government said, "Hey, we're going to outlaw alcohol." As a result, the government outlawed alcohol, and I'm not reading that. As a result, the government outlawed alcohol, and then everyone came and they started drinking illegally. And they wouldn't just drink. They started doing other illegal stuff too, because if you're gonna make drinking a beer as illegal as shooting up heroin, well, you might as well do both. Right? Similarly, you can use a similar thing for gun control. Gun control laws as we have them only work because it's not all guns that are banned. Right? The only reason gun owners tolerate a machine gun ban or a destructive device ban, which is, rocket launchers, howitzers, hand grenades, that sort of thing, is because semi-automatic weapons, an AR-15, a 9mm pistol, whatever, is not banned. If you make owning an AR-15 as illegal as owning a pipe bomb, I'm just going to start making pipe bombs in my house. If you make drinking beer as illegal as shooting up heroin, I'm just going to start shooting up heroin. If you make regular, legal, visual porn of two consenting adults engaging in intercourse as illegal as CSAM, people are going to be more willing to go engage in CSAM. Part of the barrier is the fact that there's an easier thing that you can do that will achieve roughly the same result without the legal persecution. If you remove that easier option, if you remove the option that doesn't have the legal persecution, people are just going to do the illegal thing. You can also use internet piracy as a thing. Internet piracy was a way bigger thing before Steam came around and just made it easier to just buy the game. Either you are very capitalist, anarchist, communist, anarchist, communist, or communist. So I'm not a communist. I'm a totalitarian. I don't think I'm a libertarian totalitarian, which is to say, if I'm not in power, I don't trust the government. But if I'm in power, I think I should be God, King, Emperor of the universe. So Arna says, so it's just a way to make companies more money. Arna, they can just refund the money back like OnlyFans does. That is a minutia issue. I don't care about that. It's a very easy, non-invasive way to verify somebody's age. You can't get a credit card unless you're, 17 or older, roughly. Like you just can't do it. So you just verify that they have a valid credit card, and that's it. If the way the government decides to implement that basically means we're paying a coon tax to porn sites to give them $1 so that we get to watch porn, fine, whatever. If the government decides to crack down on the porn sites by saying, like, okay, you're doing this to verify the ID, as such, you must refund that dollar as, like, a course of legal code, that's fine too. That's more moral. I'd love that. Zarna says, the cards used for these verifications are what are typically referred to as verified accounts, which requires a government ID. I understand that. Right now, maybe you're not getting this. Maybe I need to put it into scale to you. What we've had up until this point is completely unregulated internet access. As long as you can pay for internet or somehow get to something, to somebody who has paid for internet, you can access the internet. And you can access everything on it. All you have to do is know the magic words. As a result, part of that is people who maybe shouldn't be seeing certain things can access those certain things. I don't think it should be as easy for children to get to view porn as they can. And I think it would be very easy to go in and restrict that a little bit. Okay, it's not going to be an airtight system. It's not going to work 100% of the time. Yes, kids are going to get around it, but it will make it harder. That's my method. Now, the method the UK government is implementing, the method YouTube is implementing, is you provide a picture of your driver's license, you provide a picture of your face, and then YouTube is accountable to the UK government for what happens on there, basically allowing the UK government to use that, put it in a database, and just decide when you get to turn off your access to YouTube. Okay, whereas what I'm describing is a very simple digital handshake of like, all right, person has entered in this information, send it, they send us $1 to verify that it works. We send them back the $1. That's it. That would be the extent of the involvement, and all the government's involvement would be is to say, this is the bare minimum of age verification. That's all it needs to be. Hey, Big Red, welcome to chat. We're talking about politics today. In a way, it's very similar. I'm still at work. Shh. Okay. In a way, what I'm describing is similar. Actually, no, it's not. It's not similar at all. I was going to say it's similar to the thing we do for firearms purchases, but it's not at all, because that does more so involve the government. Don't tell my boss. I won't. Arna, the difference is there's degrees of separation here, right? If the government wanted to check that, instead of me having to create an account with the government to use Twitter, it would be me proving to Twitter that I'm an adult. So basically what the UK is doing is a law that forces you to use your real name and face on the internet. Which means if you say something the UK doesn't like on the internet, they can see that and trace that back to you. By flipping the order of operations there, it makes it impossible. You can still verify age, but make it impossible for the government to basically restrict your access to the internet, which they would probably still do, but they just do it the way we restrict felons' rights in general. It's a good thing. It's a good thing, and we should be going out of our way well, not we should be going out of our way. How to describe this? What's the deal? There is nothing lost by making it harder. Making it harder. I'm not saying impossible. Our goal should not be to make it impossible for kids to access porn. Because if we make that our goal, we're just going to end up with totalitarianism. Okay? So that's... It's not feasible. It's not going to happen. But if you want to make it harder, that's really easy. And all you have to do is be like, alright, ding, you have a valid credit card. Here's your money back, if you're so worried about that. Because now we know you're an adult. Or as far as we're concerned, we're an adult. Right? The government needs to establish due diligence. They need to establish a degree... What degree of due diligence porn sites have to establish whether or not their people are over the age of 18, right? If a obvious child goes into a liquor store with mommy's driver's license and says, "I'd like to buy 12 vodkas, please," and the guy goes, "Well, it's a valid driver's license. Here's your 12 vodkas," he should be and would be rightly prosecuted for selling alcohol to a minor. But if a 12-year-old goes into a bar, if a particularly tall 12-year-old goes into a bar, or not a bar, a liquor store, and let's say he's Mexican too, so he's 12 years old, but he's already got a mustache and everything, and, you know, say he does a little makeup and everything, you know, really goes out of his way to sell the look, and presents a fake ID, and the liquor store, you know, attendant sells him vodka then that liquor store attendant should not be prosecuted for selling liquor to a minor, because he had done his due diligence. All I'm saying is we need to establish what due diligence needs to be set up for porn. And part of that is we need to acknowledge that pornography is, in effect, it is a harmful material. And it's not harmful like meth. It's not harmful like heroin, where we just outright outlaw it. But it is very much harmful like alcohol, like tobacco, where it's like, well, you can form lifelong addictions, it can create dependencies, you know, it has damaging effects on the brain and brain processes, you know, it can damage your dopamine receptors. So what we do is we don't say, hey, because beer kills brain cells, it's illegal to buy beer. We say, hey, because beer kills brain cells, it's illegal to buy beer until we think you're old enough to determine whether or not that it's worth killing those brain cells for fun. My main concern, in theory, hypothetically, is requiring a third party to be required for an age verification process instead of it being a solution that is directly between the content, aka the site, and the consumer. Well, okay. No, I get what you're saying, Arna. So, I get what you're saying. You don't want a third party involved in that verification. Cool. I think that sounds great. How do you want to do that? Because If I could think of a way to do that, I'd be perfectly happy to. The reason I settle on the credit card thing is using that third party as a processor, it is specifically because of the credit cards thing. It is specifically because of the credit cards thing. That's the only reason. It's because the same reason you use a driver's license to buy alcohol. It's not an alcohol license, but you have to be 18 to have a driver's license. Right? And at 21, your driver's license gets to be aligned a certain way. And that verifies that you're old enough to buy the alcohol. So similarly, if we say like, okay, you gotta be 18 to access the content on our site, you gotta be 18 to have a credit card. That's the reason why I use credit cards as the solution. And because the government can't just... Can't. They can, but it's technically illegal. The government can't just pick a name off of a list. They can't just go to... I just am not comfortable with, for example, MasterCard coming in and saying, we no longer like your company, so we're going to shut down anyone's ability to access your site because they can't access it without us. No, absolutely, Arna. You are correct, because that's what MasterCard is doing right now. Do you know what the solution is to that? It's government regulation. It's the government coming in and saying, hey, MasterCard, you're a payment processor. You don't get to dictate terms to companies. You have to process a company's payments. If a company comes to you, or if a company signs up for your program, right, in the same way that I, running a cafe, can't deny service to a black person, MasterCard cannot deny service to a website hosting pornographic content. It's that easy. It's the same thing. It's the same debate that was happening with social media platforms back during Trump's first term of presidency, where it was like, you are a... Because they would say like, oh, well, we're a private company. We can do what we want, so we can restrict your freedom of speech. And it was like, but you're not, though. You're a platform. You're not a company. Time Magazine can decide whether or not they're going to publish articles, right? Because Time Magazine is a private company. But I can't remember exactly what it was, but there's a difference between being a journalistic organization, you know, versus being a platform. What would be the example? A movie director can decide what is in his movie, but a movie theater... Well, no, that doesn't work out. Fuck. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's basically... We would basically have to have the government come in and restrict the scope of power of these companies, which should already be happening in the first place. Corporations should not have as much power as they do. Systems already exist for age verification in most states. They scan your ID to buy alcohol or cigarettes. What's the difference of that being the same silly thing for adult sites? The internet is inherently supposed to be an anonymous space. God says no. There's my answer. God says we're not using our gay-ass driver's licenses to identify ourselves as over the age of 18 to access adult content on the internet. You can. You can have anonymous. Look, I can't explain it, but would you be comfortable using Amazon if you had to give Amazon a picture of your face to buy their shit. People don't want to provide their face and real name on the internet. They just don't. It's weird. It's gross. They don't like it. That's fine. Okay? You let people create... It's the same shit. And this is the thing I'm not saying the UK way of doing it is right. No, it seems like you're saying I'm advocating for the UK way of doing it, and that's part of why I'm getting frustrated. Oh. What a great way to ask that question, because it reminds me what the response is. The difference is, in order for the company to verify that, they have to then ping the government. So instead of having Pornhub ping Bank of America to verify you're over the age of 18, you have Pornhub ping the state of Illinois to verify that you're over the age of 18. The state of New York, the state of Alaska, whatever. Right? Because for the website to properly and accurately determine, you know, whether or not you're providing a valid ID and not just slamming out, 18 random digits that could feasibly be a government ID, right? It has to be real. So they have to access a database of that. Most financial institutions do that when they create your account. But again, it's... You're right, Arna. That would not work at all if you created a bank account for the sole purpose of accessing pornography on the internet. But most people already have bank accounts. So the government isn't just going to see, oh, you got a bank account which got pinged by Pornhub, therefore, or we'll say Twitter, by Twitter, therefore, this is your anonymous ID. We've got you all linked up and established. Again, it's... I go to Twitter. I say, "Hello, Mr. Twitter. I'd like to see some drone footage from the Ukraine and maybe some oiled up titties, please." Okay, cool. Before you do that, not even before you do that, when you create your account, we just need to do this. Most financial institutions... Let me ask you something, Arna. Have you ever gotten bits? Have you ever gifted somebody bits or, subscriptions on Twitch? Have you ever super chatted on YouTube? Well, congratulations. You linked your real name and identity to your internet profile. Why aren't you worried about the government kicking down your door? Why aren't you worried about the Project 2025 crew kicking in your door and dragging you kicking and screaming with a black bag over your head into a van? And restricting your access to the internet lest you say something harmful. Why aren't you worried about that? Because they already have that. Do you think that when you first made a YouTube account and linked a card to it so that you could send a super chat, that they sent an email to the government and said, you know, hey, this credit card was linked to this YouTube account, and we see that this credit card is under the name of Jane Smith. Anyways, that's all for now. Have a nice day. But I understand that as a part of the terms and conditions of using the site and paying for bits or chats. If I didn't want to have my personal information shared, then I don't have to give my bits. Bits aren't a human right. Correct! Neither is pornography. You can go buy a dirty magazine from the gas station with cash. And remember, this is my olive branch. If I could work my will, if a wizard would let me have one wish to just either delete all porn from the internet, or conversely, because it can be either or, I don't care, delete all children from the internet, I'd push the button in an instant. I would take that option. But it's not realistic, it's not feasible. And in the case of shutting it down completely, it's not my place to, you know, make that call. That would be tyranny, and everyone would push back against it, as we see they are already doing. So if I want to legally access adult sites under whatever law it is, I know what I have to provide information to be able to access the big titty goth mommies. Effectively, yeah. Now, again, there would still be workarounds. There would still be workarounds. Because places like, I said this earlier, it wouldn't work across the board. It wouldn't be airtight. Discord, Reddit, Twitter, Facebook. Well, not Facebook, because porn is against their TOS, but any place where, like, porn is allowed based off the TOS, but it is not, strictly speaking, a porn site, you wouldn't be able to. Or you would be able to, right? So, if you wanted to go watch the latest Brazzers video on Pornhub, or X-Hamster, or whatever, or OnlyFans, yeah, you would have to provide your information. But if you just wanted to see titties, you would go to r/titties. Because, again, a huge part of this, chat, a huge part of this is what is the reasonable expectation from the company? What is the reasonable expectation of preventing minors from accessing materials they shouldn't have access to on behalf of the government and on behalf of the corporation? Right? We need to establish what is the reasonable expectation. Some people think it's the government's place to be your mommy. Some people think it's Amazon's place to be your mommy. Those people are wrong. It is not. But it is their place. It is their place not to provide that service to obvious children. You can't sell cigarettes to a kid. If you sold cigarettes to a kid, you would be prosecuted for it. But if a kid stole cigarettes from your store, if a kid stole cigarettes from mommy and daddy's medicine cabinet, well, medicine cabinet, damn, they would not be prosecuted. Okay? Reasonable expectations. That's what I'm advocating for. There are reasonable restrictions. There's a reasonable amount of making it difficult without making it impossible. Okay? Part of that is I don't think you should have to provide a picture of your face and, you know, your government ID and yada 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 and all this kind of stuff to websites to access porn. All I'm trying to do is think of, like, the most anonymous way to verify you're over the age of 18 while still maintaining your privacy as a private citizen. There is no perfect way to do that, but the best way is to just go like, okay, why isn't the "are you 18 plus" a reasonable expectation? Because they know it doesn't work. What? Arno, why isn't it a reasonable legal expectation for the gas station attendant to just ask the 4-foot-tall 6-year-old with baby face, "Are you over the age of 18?" before they sell them cigarettes? Why isn't it a reasonable expectation for the bouncer at the door to the strip club to ask the 12-year-old boy, "What year were you born?" and just take his answer at face value? The gas station can ask to see your ID. That is true. The gas station can ask to see your ID. Why can't the porn site ask to see your ID? The porn site isn't going to ask to see your ID. I don't care if the porn site asks to see your ID. I care if the government mandates the porn site to ask for my ID. The government doesn't mandate Walmart to check my driver's license before they let me buy melatonin. They ask them to verify that I'm over the age of 18. Sometimes that's as easy as just looking at me. Sometimes that means going, "Hey, can I see your ID?" And it's a risk versus liability decision at a company level, how hard they enforce that. I feel like you're arguing in bad faith. And this is being very frustrating to me. Because you keep just going, "Oh, but that means you have to give your ID to the government. Oh, but that means you have to give your ID to the government. So we should just keep it right the way it is," where, you know, these for-profit porn sites that make money from advertising revenue are saying, "We want to get kids addicted to porn as early as possible." You have to understand, that quote is the entire basis for my moral position. That is the only reason I care. Because if we were all on the same page of, like, we don't want to get kids addicted to this, then I would be more than happy to go like, okay, well, they're doing everything they can reasonably be expected to do. But they have shown themselves, they have admitted themselves that what they want to do is to prey upon the vulnerability of our most vulnerable to get them addicted to a product that they can then sell. If Camel came out and said, "Our goal is to get kids addicted to cigarettes as early as possible," if Kick or Steak came out and said, "Our goal is to get kids addicted to gambling as early as possible," and I found out they were running some casino, some gas station, where the only age verification was, "Are you sure you're 18, buddy?" I feel like your entire argument is built on bad faith. Well, it's not. It's built off evidence. If you're peddling an addictive substance, saying that you want to get kids addicted to that substance as early as possible, you're a bad person, and you deserve to get regulated into the fucking dirt. How every person in that industry works. Yes. Arna, why don't cam girls stream on Pornhub? Why don't cam girls stream on Pornhub? They absolutely could, and if they did, they'd actually be able to, you know, hypothetically, make more money. They'd be able to do more stuff. They'd be able to do more sexually explicit stuff. Right? The reason they don't isn't because they're like, oh, teehee, I'm just a girl and I wanna just do gamer things. They do? Not really. Pick any cam girl you want. They usually have a separate stream for Twitch than they do for Pornhub, than they do for, you know, those other sites. And it's not because, oh, this is a less explicit stream. They do explicit shit all the time. That's literally what hot tub streaming is. They do explicit shit all the time. The reason they stream on Twitch... is because on Twitch they get paid in views. And for some odd reason, they get more views on Twitch, which doesn't have robust age verification, than they do on, you know, sites like Chatterbait. Do you know why that is? Do you know why that is? Here, I'll tell you, let you in on a little secret. Most of Twitch's viewing audience are aged 13 and under. Okay, follow-up question. What grown-ass adult do you know that, like, really sincerely wants to get their jimmies rustled by a girl in a bikini in a hot tub? They're out there, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's impossible, so don't say, oh, my best friend. I'm not saying it's impossible. But the overwhelming majority of adults, if they want to get their jimmies rustled, they'll go to a dedicated porn site. So the people that don't, well, they probably have either they don't know where to go, which I couldn't possibly comprehend why somebody over the age of 18 who wants to get their jimmies rustled wouldn't be aware of Pornhub or X-Hamster, or there's a parental block on that content on the device they're using. A great deal of the adult industry on the internet centers around children as an audience, and it does that purely because of advertiser-based revenue, right? So, okay, great. Here's another solution. Make it illegal for Pornhub to run banner ads. Now they have to turn profit from memberships and everything else, and oh, how are they going to do that? Credit cards. Right? It's the same reason I don't have a problem with porn games on Steam, because you have to buy them. Viewing audience, yeah, so that's different from account holders. That's not just people who have Twitch accounts. That is people who have Twitch accounts but don't stream. Because the overwhelming amount of Twitch accounts are tied in to streaming content. Where are you getting that information from? It was revealed to me in a dream. Listen, I don't have the sources for any of my stuff on hand. Okay, this is all aggregated information I've heard over the years. Okay, this is stuff I've heard in unrelated YouTube videos talking about different stuff, talking about the blight of hot tub streamers back in the day, back in, 2014 and stuff like that, when that was the big issue. Okay. I am not writing an Oxford paper here. I am not writing a college report. I am explaining a position, a problem, and a solution. If you are viewing this from an academic perspective, I'm sorry. You're going to be disappointed. I do not have citations for my sources. I don't have quotes. I don't have video evidence because this isn't a video. This is a stream. This is, in effect, you talking to a buddy in a bar. And if your buddy is talking about something in a bar and you're asking him for a source, guess what? You're the dick. You're being the pedantic midwit. If you're doing that. So, no, I can't provide you with a source. I'm sorry. I can tell you that I've heard this in the past, and that this is not something I would lie about. I don't have a dog in this race as far as lying. Remember, I hold a very contradictory position. I'm a anti-pornography porn addict. Okay? The plan, it's not something I've gotten to implement, really, but the plan was to use, you know, soft... I don't know if you'd call it softcore, but, like, lewd artistry in my YouTube thumbnails so that I don't violate terms of service, but I still am getting neuron activation clickbait. And the reason I consider that a moral and okay thing to do is because it wouldn't be the main thrust of the content. That's why I think it would be okay. Alright, if you're so desperate that you're gooning to a YouTube thumbnail, it's like, alright, man. At that point, I feel like that's almost not really my responsibility. Especially if I make a YouTube thumbnail that falls within the terms of service and is basically just, you know, a chick in a bikini. Right? I'm not saying I'm the perfect moral arbitrator here. I'm not saying I'm not a hypocrite. Okay? I hold a fairly contradictory position. I'm anti-porn, but I'm pro-free speech. I think that these games and this content deserves to exist. I do. But if you gave me a button that would permanently delete it, I would push it. Not keep the government out. The government needs to be involved, but the government needs to be involved the right way. And it's not the government's job to protect. The government has due diligence. It's the government's job to act in due diligence. I'm not trying to be pedantic, I'm just confused because I don't understand what the point is you're trying to make. And what I'm struggling... Well... Alright. Alright, here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do. OBS, would you stop being a naughty word I can't say on Twitch, please? Okay. Ah! Fine, whatever. Where's MS Paint? Part of the reason you're having a hard time understanding me is because you keep interrupting to say things and I'm getting off track. Because this is a multifaceted issue. It really is. It really is. And I'm not saying that to be a dick. I'm not saying that to be like pirate software. Ooh, you don't understand. I know I'm pulling up the pirate software of fucking MS Paint. But like, I'm not over here trying to be a dick or anything. I'm trying to explain my position, and it's a complicated position because there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of stuff that's tangentially related to each other that's all happening at once. Alright? So, let's start with a timeline. We'll just make our timeline, we'll make it a white timeline. Why's the timeline gotta be white? Here's our timeline. It's not straight at all, because I'm using MS Paint. I don't care. Our first point on our timeline is here in... Bear in mind, this whole timeline is 2025. Okay? Whole timeline is 2025. So here, this was March of 2025. We'll put this in pink because this is Collective Shout. So we're gonna color code everything. Collective Shout attacked the Steam rape game. All right. That was in March. Now, as an effect of that, the rape game went down off Steam. Not because Steam took it down, but because the creator went, you know, it's a little bit much. I got my Streisand effect clicks. I'll just host it on my own website. So that's what they did. Which I would consider to be the good ending. Okay? Nothing else really happened for a little while. Flash forward to July. Now, in July, pink, Collective Shout, Visa, MasterCard, and Steam, sort of, all got together, and they said, no more porn. They basically said, hey, we're not going to let, specifically really bad porn. So that's like your incest, your yada yada, your whatever. All right. Now, this is its own issue. I want to be clear. These things here, these are their own thing. The solution here is to get, we're going to use green for the government, is to get the government involved, because what's happening is Collective Shout, Visa, and MasterCard are dictating and attacking a inalienable human right that is guaranteed by the United States government for United States citizens of the First Amendment. So when I'm calling for government involvement, it's because right now private corporations and foreign political entities are attacking sovereign, inalienable human rights of United States citizens, and it is the government's job to protect those rights. If Amazon was going door to door, kicking in people's doors and confiscating their firearms, I would expect the government to step in and say, no, you can't do that. So that's point one. Now, at the same time, this is something that's always existed. We'll write this in red. The UK government, they've had this since, I don't know, probably 2001, maybe earlier. But the UK government has this thing called the Online Safety Act. Now, the Online Safety Act is basically every time you hear some horrible nightmare story about somebody getting persecuted by the government in the UK over a tweet or something like that, it's usually being enforced under the Online Safety Act, which basically is the UK government saying, hey, we as the government have not only the right but the obligation to protect you, the citizen, the everyday user, from being abused on the internet, and we have to prevent abuse on the internet. Basically, it's the UK saying it's like an anti-troll law. You're not allowed to be mean on the internet. You're not allowed to be racist on the internet. Now, what they were selling it as here in 2025 is anti-porn. Because what the UK really wants I can kind of see why Pirate Software likes doing this. This is actually a little bit satisfying. Now, what the UK really wants is they want Internet ID. Okay, remember, we're talking about the country that has TV licenses. The United Kingdom is vastly more tyrannical than you can possibly comprehend. They want to have an Internet ID so they can more easily track down their own citizens saying naughty things on the internet. They can't just go out and say, hey, we're mandating an Internet ID, because that's going to get struck down. Okay, you got to understand, the way proper authoritarianism works is it's slow, it's over time, and it's one little thing at a time. That's the way you properly do oppression. You can see the same thing in the way gun regulations happened in California. California didn't just ban guns overnight to the extent that they did. What they did is they went one law at a time, one policy at a time, one common sense gun control measure at a time, until eventually they're at the point now where you have to have a sporterized AR-15 and the government has to know about it, yada, yada, yada. Australia did the same thing. New Zealand did the same thing. The UK did the same thing. If you want to restrict citizens' rights and oppress them, you have to do it a little bit at a time. Now, in the UK, they've already got all the hate speech laws they needed. What they needed next was an inroad to start regulating art on the internet. So, videos, drawn artwork, games, anything like that. So the UK, separate to all this stuff, passed their own recent online... They basically expanded the Online Safety Act to encompass pornography. Alright? This is tyranny. And we'll draw a little frowny face so you guys know we don't like that. And I'll do the same thing here. Frowny face here because we don't like that, but we do like First Amendment rights. Right? Now, I guess I didn't need all this timeline, huh? Because that's just the last 2 months. That's fine. That's fine. So let's come over here. So now over here, we have Nick's beliefs, right? So we say, Nick thinks. That was kind of slick, not gonna lie. Looks kind of cool. There. Okay, so we're back over to what I think, right? Well, what do I think, chat? I think First Amendment, good. I like the First Amendment. The freedom of speech, the freedom of expression. That applies to everything. That applies to communists saying, you know, kill the middle class. That applies to black nationalists who say kill all white people. That applies to people I like who say things I like. That I'm not going to specify it. Free speech is for everyone. Free speech includes speech you don't like. That's a very important part of free speech. That's something a lot of people on the extreme right, people who would advocate for this, don't understand. Right? Because you got to understand, the whole UK Online Safety Act porn ban is so that they can start getting right-wing people voting for their own oppression, in essence. The same thing gets pushed unsuccessfully in the United States all the time, and it's usually unsuccessful because we have the Bill of Rights that basically guarantees our ability to do these things. All speech is good, except, right, we do have illegal speech, but we all kind of understand what illegal speech is. Illegal speech is, you know, me taking a picture on Facebook with my gun and saying, I'm gonna come to the White House and kill the president, blah, 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 blah. Please, FBI, CIA, NSA, and Twitch mods. I'm being ironic, I swear. That's illegal speech. Illegal speech is, right, when we're talking visual media, right, freedom of expression. Illegal freedom of expression is CSAM, right? It's videos of the sexual abuse and exploitation of children. That violates your freedom of expression. That doesn't violate your freedom of expression. That we have determined that that is freedom of expression that is okay to violate. But freedom of expression that's not okay to violate is, I think God wore a turban and had a beard and says that I should have 5 wives. That's freedom of speech that we allow. Right? So, First Amendment, good. Nick also thinks porn bad, but not illegal. Okay? There's a reason I keep using gambling, smoking, drinking in my analogies when I'm talking about proper regulation of the porn industry, of pornographic materials, and it is because it is a vice material. We regulate our vice materials to keep them out of the hands of vulnerable people who, quite frankly, can't handle it. And we do so on a basis of extremity, right? Heroin, meth, these things are flat out illegal. Marijuana's not illegal. I mean, on a federal level it is, but basically every state has said, hey, marijuana's okay. But it's still illegal to distribute to minors. Why is it illegal to distribute to minors? Well, because of the effects it can have on the brain. Same with alcohol, same with smoking. Porn has been shown in studies to have those same kind of effects. So I'm saying we should be willing to regulate it more rigorously. So as part of this, I think we should do more to enforce our 18 plus rule. The solution, I think, to the 18 plus thing is to use, yes, payment processors, because payment processors are a third party that you have to be over 18 to use to do. So, I don't know why I tried to write all that out. PP. PP. So, to explain, chat, to wrap it up, right? We'll do our color coding again. All right? So, government regulates. We'll say blue for our payment processors. Payment processors. And what I mean by that is trust-busting anti-monopoly measures, right? So we'll put here TB and anti-monopoly. Basically saying payment processors have an obligation to process payments. They're obligated to provide that service. So in a way, it's kind of like nationalizing payment processors, but I don't want it actually nationalized. You know, I just want like one law that says, hey, you're not allowed to dictate what is sold. Why was this so hard for me to say earlier? I want the government to enforce a law upon payment processors that says you are not allowed to dictate what is sold on a site that you provide a service for. All right. Then, payment processors regulate porn. Basically, what they're doing there is they're regulating access, making sure that everything stays. Oh, that's the wrong color. Making sure, doing a better job of making sure 18 plus, right? But this is not perfect. And that's okay. It's actually important that it not be a perfect system. Okay? Now, porn, then, all they're doing is they're providing a service to us, customers. So, all they have to do is sell product. And that's just, again, if I could ban porn, I would, but realistically, it's unfeasible. People like seeing people naked. People like doing the sex. Fine, whatever. Right? It's important. It's important for people on the right. It's important for pro-censorship people to understand. If you regulate it too much, there is a sweet spot of regulation. If you regulate beyond that sweet spot, people are just going to get super depraved and they're going to start breaking the law. Okay? And then it's our job as the people to regulate the government. And we do that through our voting, through our protest. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is all of this, everyone is naturally beholden to the next, or to the previous link in the chain, right? So, the government is beholden to the people. We vote for the politicians, right? The reason why I'm okay with the government enforcing these policies and being in charge of these policies is we vote for the government. That's why I'm anti-payment processors making these decisions. That's why I'm anti-payment processors having control over what I can or can't buy on Steam or itch.io or Amazon or whatever. I didn't vote for Visa and MasterCard. I voted for my local representative. I can protest my local representative. I have the right to protest my local representative. My local representative can't sue me for sending them letters telling them that I disagree with the things they're doing. My local representative can't sue me for organizing against them. I have alternatives to my local representative. I don't have those things with Visa and MasterCard. The payment processors, the whole reason this is a problem is because there is no alternative to the payment processors. Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, they all got together and said, we are banning this. They said, we're not going to support this, and that's a problem. Because I didn't vote for them, and it's not going to stop at porn. So, the payment processors are beholden to the government. The government can come in and bust. They can come in and bust. They can come in and break up monopolies, and break up duopolies, and regulate these markets. They don't have to get into a finance off with the payment processors. They don't have to try to take their business elsewhere. The government can just come in with the police and say, hey, stop. The porn sites are beholden to the payment processors. So if the payment processor says to the porn site, hey, you just need to do a better job of verifying that your customers are over the age of 18. Again, in my case, it's a simple act of pinging to basically make sure that they're giving a valid bank account. That's it. And then the porn company provides the service that we, the people, are buying. Again, the whole thing of being beholden to the previous link in the chain kind of breaks down here because people can just not engage in this. But this basically summarizes my position. This is what I'm advocating for, right? I want the government to uphold the First Amendment and freedom of speech and prevent unelected corporate entities from controlling my rights. Okay, I'm anti-corporatist. But I don't want the government to come in and determine that either. Because again, this is all... What the UK is doing is a free speech violation. What the payment processors are doing is a free speech violation. That's the problem. It's the violation of the freedom of speech. Alright. I'm pretty sure I've explained myself as best I can. So let me pull this over and it's time to read my chat. Because speaking of freedom of speech, I'm going to read your guys' messages as well. I just needed a second to read, God damn it. Fuck off, you. To basically explain myself and my position without constantly getting distracted and pulled off topic and everything. Okay. No, but you're crying. Everyone's out here trying to corrupt our children. They are. I mean this with a lot of care. Normally your rants are pretty obvious and direct, lol. Big Red is also anti-porn. Yep. The problem is, Big Red, the reason that we can't be anti-porn like that is because it's not going to stop at porn. Okay, I'm on the... Okay, still following. Okay, haha. God damn it, I just have to read it over here. Okay, I'm seeing where our opinions differ in this graph. This makes more sense. My viewpoint in this is that the whole payment process or portion of the cycle is unethical and government overreach on private companies. Okay. I'm thinking of how I need to word this. Give me a second. I didn't realize you were so pro-corporation, Arna. I didn't realize you were a corpo like that. So, alright, got it. Got it. Let me pull this out. We're going to expand this chat because I'm explaining stuff. I'm going to pull this out and box this in. Okay. Okay, Arna, I will read that message in a moment. For right now, I want to address your government overreach on private corporations. Because I understand what you're saying, and I do want to talk about that, because that's a realistic position a lot of people are going to have, especially Americans. And so, but yeah, like with all things, there's nuance to it, okay? So, in modern politics, at least modern Western politics, we kind of have this particular conception where... of almost like a perception of power, where you have the government. Government is very powerful. And then you have the... We'll use blue for the corporation. Then you have the corporation. And the corporation is powerful, but we actually, we as civilians, we as citizens, we don't think the corporations are super powerful. We generally think of corporations on par with the power of the people, which is kind of true. But you gotta understand, why is the government beholden to the people, right? In the U.S. Constitution, or Declaration of Independence, we the people, right? It's very much a thing in America, in the United States, but just Western countries in general, that the power of the government derives from the consent of the governed, which is true. Why? It's because if everyone disagrees with the government, you get France, where they all come break into the government's house and cut its fucking head off. But in order to do that, you can't do that with just... You can't do that while all the people are different, right? We think of it as corporations are all one thing and people are all one thing. When that's not true. Neither of these conceptions of corporations or people is true. The conception of the government as one entity is broadly true. The government's all pretty much on the same page. They fight and they bicker and stuff, but when we're talking about it on this scale, the government's all on the same page. Okay? The people control the government when they act as one. But the people don't control the government, okay, when it's people, right? When everyone's on a separate page, when everyone's got a different direction to go, especially if it's very different, the people don't control the government. Especially if all the people are fighting, right? We're getting neo-Marxist politics here on this stream chat, sorry. But if all the people are fighting, they can't affect any control over the government. Now, the way capitalism works is the same thing. Capitalism works, it's such a fair system, it's such a good system, because we keep all our companies like this, right? Where all the companies are different, and all the companies have to compete with each other over the people, right? And that's how we keep the companies in line. That's what keeps the companies fair. That's what makes capitalism a good system, is companies competing. But let me ask you something, Arna, and just chatter in general, you know, random anarcho-capitalist corpo chatter in general. What keeps the companies, what keeps Amazon, Visa, and you can't actually say FedEx. Oh, Disney, from all deciding that they're going to get together and they're going to fuck the people. What stops them from doing that? What stops them is we had this cool thing in the early 1800s where the government came in and said, that's not allowed. The government came in and said, you have to do this. Because otherwise, what you have, right, if the government doesn't do that, right, if we have, here, we'll draw a different graph. If we have over here, if we have little government that is beholden to big people, what you're gonna get is big corporation that is then on top of the people. And remember, the corporation is unelected. When governments get to a government can be overthrown at any size. A corporation can get to a size where it is immune to the voice of the people. That's why we prefer a government that controls corporations. Bear in mind, a government that protects people from corporations. I'll do a different drawing. We want the people using the shield of the government against the corporations. So, I understand what you're saying as far as government overreach, but when we're talking about Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal all getting together and saying, Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal are all getting together and saying, no porn, like they won't service a company that sells porn. That is corporate overreach, and it is the government's job to stop that. Because, again, they're all making the same decision. If only Visa made the decision, it wouldn't matter. If only PayPal made the decision, it wouldn't matter. Because they're acting as a unit, they're acting not as a monopoly, but as a trust. And a trust is legally defined by the United States government as basically the same thing as a monopoly, and is not allowed and should be broken apart. Okay, now to read chat. Okay, so, to start off, You said, my viewpoint in this is that the whole payment processor portion of this cycle is unethical and government overreach on private companies. So what would be your opinion on a solution where it's like a software or something that an adult site can basically do a single ping to verify a valid driver's license or other ID number, then have a mechanism that instantly deletes that information, so it isn't stored, it isn't kept and controlled by the government, it's strict verification for validity of the information? Yeah, I'd be fine with that. As far as I know, such a thing doesn't exist. I can't conceptualize of a way that you would make that feasible, where you're not at risk of, having that sort of thing getting hacked or leaked or anything like that. And you can say like, oh, they can do the same thing with the bank account information. And while that's true, consider part of the reason why I'm pro using the payment processor for age verification, in essence, is because payment processors getting tied into like your internet accounts is already pretty ubiquitous. That happens on most everything anyways, right? When you sign up to a streaming service, payment processor. When you order a pizza, payment processor. When you want to, tip somebody on YouTube or Twitch, like we said earlier, payment processor. It's already so ubiquitous, the infrastructure's already there, and I'm like, well, why don't we just do that? That's easier than making people now register their driver's license or their government ID to their account. If you can make this thing work, by all means. It's not that I'm pro-corporate, but I think it gets dangerous when we are saying it's the government's job to hold the payment processors to not be allowed to control how their services are used and force them to accept all content. Again, the problem is there's only 3 payment processors. It's about numbers. With people, the more people you have all doing something, the more power they have. With corporations, the fewer corporations you have, the more power they have. It's the government's job to make sure there's always a lot of corporations. And it's not force them to accept all content. It's enforcing the First Amendment. Okay? This is something where it's like, sadly, our brothers and sisters in Britbong land, Pessoa, down in Brazil, our foreign friends can't be protected by this. So Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal can basically bend them over and fuck them as hard as they want. But at least in the United States of America, it would be illegal for them to enact those kind of policies. Now, what typically happens is if a governmental entity dictates to a corporation that they have to start doing something, they have to start regulating a certain way, usually that corporation, it is cheaper for them to just do it across the board. Like with the European Union mandating that Apple products be compatible with USB-C type chargers. Apple, instead of just making special Euro phones, they just made all their phones compatible with USB-C chargers. If you had the US government tell payment processors, hey, you can't dictate to Steam what kind of content is sold on Steam, the payment processors would more than likely just back down from the issue entirely. So, my opinion is the best way to stop things like Collective Shout doing what they are doing is by requiring age verification processes that meet certain regulations and verifiability requirements to ensure that the people can only access 18 plus content if they are actually 18 plus. Yeah, absolutely. I'm cool with that. A great example, the private power company in Nova Scotia is also who approves permitting and licensing for all projects. The government is telling a private company they are solely responsible for it, but that means that the company can make any rules they want. There are no other options, and that creates a whole... Right, you're talking about nationalization. I'm not saying that the government should nationalize Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal. The government should be hitting Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal and saying, what you're doing is illegal. Okay, it's, If Jeff Bezos sent someone to your house to shoot you in the head, it is the government's duty to prosecute Jeff Bezos and say what you did was illegal. You violated that person's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The government doesn't have to buy out Amazon to prosecute them. I don't want the government to control Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal. I want the government to wrap a leash around them and say you're not allowed to violate the First Amendment. TLDR, my opinion is that we shouldn't give payment processors more power. It's not giving them power. So, when I'm advocating for the payment processor thing, all the payment processor does is exist. The payment processor doesn't authorize the creation of the 18 plus account. The website does. They authorize it once they've verified that it's a valid bank account. And again, they do that by the OnlyFans model of charging the bank account 10 cents and then refunding it immediately after. That software that collects pings, deletes, it already exists. It's what's used when a company scans your ID for cigarettes or alcohol. Software is also used at airports by the TSA to determine if your ID is valid. I fully agree that what they are doing with porn is very antitrust. However, coming in and saying, well, now you have to be fully responsible for all age verification for content is where the overreach starts to happen. Okay, I get you. So now you're bringing it back to the whole government needs to make sure that porn isn't peddling their smut to children. And that's just a difference of morality. Like, you have to understand, you think of it as, you know, a website is hosting a service that they're just streaming to anybody who says they're over 18. I view it as a website is directly and intentionally profiting off of selling basically heroin to kids. That's not something that we're really going to agree on. I'm going to be very staunchly government stop selling, government intervening in a company selling heroin to kids. I will always be anti-government anti-company selling heroin to kids. And hey, that's just my opinion, man. I had the instinct to say that. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. That's understandable. I just don't think the payment processor is he should be the gatekeeper. Again, the payment processor doesn't do a conscious thing. It's like CAPTCHAs. Okay, the CAPTCHA... Maybe CAPTCHA's not a good example. Hang on. I'm gonna have to draw, chat. I'm gonna have to draw! I'm sorry, you guys thought we were done. We're not done. Sorry. I gotta draw, chat. I gotta draw. Okay. Because Arna seems confused, and as far as I'm concerned, if Arna's confused, that means that I need to just not keep reiterating. That means I need to expound upon my point. I'm almost using Arna as a way to check my own work as far as, like, am I properly communicating my point? And every time she's confused, I'm going to reiterate and expand upon what I'm trying to say. So, we'll do a red box for Arna. So, this is what Arna seems to be hearing me say. Is that I think it should be, we've been using pink for people. People goes to say people and porn. Okay, yeah. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do this. People wants to access porn. Payment processor stops that and says, are you 18? And then on the other side, we'll just have porn. And then if the person says, yes, bank, then the payment processor says, cool, you're allowed to see porn. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is green line for what I'm saying, right? This is my box. Nick. So, chat, what I'm saying is person wants to see porn. Parn. Because I accidentally made it like an A. And we're going to have to do this in cells. Person wants to see porn. And then... so they do that, and we'll put an orange wall in for stop. Because it's the porn site stopping the access. Right? And then porn says... Porn says to the person, bank. It's kind of hard to see, but that says bank. Where porn is asking the person for a payment processor. Then, person says, God damn it. Person says, to porn. We're drawing our characters. Person says, yes, I have a bank. Then, porn and person get to work together. Porn lets person see porn, basically. So it's not that the payment processor is the gatekeeper. Porn is just checking for a payment processor. Now, yes, Kanye West would not be allowed to watch porn under this system. Don't get yourself debanked and you'll be able to watch porn. But I feel like if you're in a situation where you've gotten yourself debanked, you have bigger problems than lack of access to pornography. You know, like lack of access to money. So that's what I'm saying, right? And so we'll put an X up here and a frowny face. We don't like that. Chat, we don't like that. We like this. Ding. Okay. I don't think the payment processor being the gatekeeper. Governments shouldn't outsource their responsibilities to private companies. Okay, but access to a financial institution isn't something that is a guaranteed right to every person. You can go your whole life without a bank. If you're living your life without using a bank, you're probably living your life without using internet porn. I'm sorry, but I am perfectly happy unjustly restricting access to internet pornography to the illegal immigrant who's getting paid in cash under the table. Not necessarily because he's done anything wrong or anything like that, but because it's like, that's a loophole in the plan where the only person who gets fucked is the person deliberately operating outside the system. That violates the First Amendment. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and have your liberal mind games with your social arts program degree from college poke holes in what was clearly revealed to me in a dream. Privatizing access only limits freedoms unjustly. Okay, but do you know what my system isn't doing? You know what my system isn't doing? It doesn't have payment processors telling you what kind of art you're allowed to make. Which, chat, let's come over here to my Twitter. And let's look at my posts. Because Visa MasterCard posted their... They posted, like, their exact terms of service. Right, here. So, this is MasterCard's policy that they're enforcing on Steam, itch.io, and everyone else. Illegal or brand-damaging transactions. A merchant must not submit to its acquirer, and a customer must not submit to the interchange system any transaction that is illegal, which is fine, because that hits CSAM, and, like, drug deals and stuff like that. And we're okay with that. Everyone agrees the law is generally a pretty good litmus test for what you should and shouldn't be allowed to buy. Generally. Or in the sole discretion of the corporation, may damage the goodwill of the corporation or reflect negatively on the marks. Meaning, you can't sell anything, you as the customer can't buy anything, and you as the company can't sell anything that we think makes us look bad. So, if MasterCard wakes up one day and says, you know what? It's 2025. It's a super right-wing government. We really want to get in good with MAGA. We are now refusing to process payments for any Pride-related merch. So that means we're not gonna sell subscriptions to RuPaul's Drag Race. We're not gonna sell. We're not gonna process. Right, not gonna sell. We're not gonna process payments for RuPaul's Drag Race. We're not gonna process payments for gay stuff. We're not, if they woke up one day and decided, you know what, fuck gay people, they're not allowed to have us process their payments anymore because they make us look bad under a right-wing government. That's now their thing. But they specify the sale of a, and this is what I originally wanted to get to. It's this highlighted portion here. The sale of a product or service, including an image, which is patently offensive and lacks serious artistic value. So that is MasterCard now saying we get to dictate what does or doesn't qualify as artistic value. So if it's patently offensive, let's say MasterCard decides RuPaul's Drag Race is patently offensive and lacks serious artistic value. They're now not going to do that. Now, they also go on, non-consensual sexual behavior, sexual exploitation of a minor, which was never an issue. Nobody cares about non-consensual sexual exploitation. Non-consensual mutilation of a person or body part. Chat, MasterCard is saying they will restrict access at their own discretion to anything, to any company or customer that is trying to buy or sell something that depicts fictional, non-consensual mutilation of a person or body part, i.e. most video games, i.e. Skyrim, Battlefield, Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Dragon Age, Baldur's Gate 3. This is literally video games. This is MasterCard inserting themselves and saying, we are the arbitrator of what video games are allowed to be sold. And this is the main thrust. They're not going to stop with the gross porn that we don't like. This is why I'm having to come up and defend porn. Normally, I would be more than happy to say, good, restrict it, regulate it into the dirt, make it hard to get access to. Go for it. Vox Populi, Vox Dei, all that kind of good stuff. But in this particular case, they're saying, yeah, you know, we think that we have the right to determine whether or not you're allowed to do that, you know, or violence in video games. I see Arna blowing up my chat, and I think I saw something. That's their right as a company. So we're going to have to... That's a company's right. If I'm a wedding planner, a bakery is allowed to tell me they aren't going to make a cake with a bunch of dicks painted all over it for their client because it damages their brand. Actually, Arna, they're not. Actually, the particular bakery in Colorado lost that case, and it was determined to be discrimination for them to do that. But let's take it a step further, because we're not talking about a wedding planner, right? If it's a wedding planner, you have options. It is not within your local power company's right to determine that they're not going to give power to people. You know, they're not going to provide electricity to paying customers who voted the wrong way. It is not in the rights of the Salt River Project, who provides utilities and electricity in my region, to determine, you know what, if you drive a Nissan, fuck you, no electricity. They don't have that right. There is such a thing as a right to service. In this case, we all agree, look, if it's not illegal, it has a right to service. I feel like I'm just going to talk myself in circles. They aren't saying a video game can't be made or sold. They're saying they don't want to be a part of that transaction. Okay, Arna, so if Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal all say that same thing, which they are, okay? Do you remember the last payment processor election? I don't. Visa, MasterCard, PayPal. Okay? Unelected officials. And they all say, we'll do pink. They all say, no more pride. It's not allowed. Or not that it's not allowed. They're not saying it's not allowed. They're not saying you can't make pride stuff. They're not saying you can't sell pride stuff. They're just all saying they won't be a part of it, therefore meaning you can't sell it online. And we're still talking about products. We're talking about products. Okay? They're saying this would be like the U.S. government. This would be like the U.S. fucking government coming in and saying, listen, we're not saying you can't make your movie. We're just saying you can't sell tickets with American dollars. You can't accept American dollars as payment. We're not restricting freedom of speech. This isn't the government enforcing, artistic regulations. We're just saying you can't use our federal currency that is the only option in this country to pay for that. Again, if it were just one of them, this would not be a problem. The problem is that it's all of them. This is not Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal all simultaneously waking up one morning and just going like, you know what, I think selling porn games makes us look bad. This is a calculated power grab for them to go, we should be able to determine what kind of goods and services are sold through our payment processors. But it isn't the only option. Arna, who is the other option? You can't go buy a pizza online. Don't use Visa, MasterCard, or PayPal. How are you going to do it? Because there is other options, but do you know them? Without looking it up? Amex? Okay. American Express. You know what? I'm going to do some quick research here. American Express. American Express. Wikipedia. Wikipedia. Because I'd be willing to bet American Express is owned by somebody. Actually, no, it doesn't matter because we're dealing with the internet. We're dealing with online international payments. People in Sweden who want to buy stuff off Steam can't use American Express. If the payment processors are determining access to porn sites... Arna, they are not determining access to porn sites. The porn site is checking that you have a bank account. It's different. They're not asking the bank, hey, bank, is it okay that this person buys porn? They're just going, this person has a bank account? Okay, go. Why don't we use them to verify if you can buy a gun? Okay, so we use government IDs to verify if you can buy a gun, and we do background checks to verify if you can buy a gun, because we're checking a criminal history to make sure you're not going to go kill a bunch of people with it. You're not going to kill a bunch of people with porn. We use government IDs to verify your age for alcohol and cigarettes, because A, that's something you typically have to buy in person, and B... I'm retreading ground, and I'm not going to keep doing it. I have explained this thoroughly. I have drawn you pictures and graphs. Please consult the graph. How does it verify a dependent account versus an adult account? It's... Because you're not putting in, like, your routing number and everything. The bank account is just part of it. Okay, the verification happens through the financial transaction. Heavens, excuse me. The verification happens through the financial transaction of 10 cents going from person to porn site, and then from porn site back to person. Okay? It goes from bank account to porn bank account, then from porn bank account back to person. But how does it move between the two? Through a payment processor who is just processing another of a bazillion different payments. The payment processor isn't actually checking anything. Okay? The fire hose does not check for water. The fire hose is just there to move water. The fire hose doesn't determine if the water moves. Payment processors should not determine if the payment processes. Either there's money on the other side or there isn't. Wires, an electrical circuit does not determine if there's a flow of electricity. It simply facilitates, or it doesn't determine if there's electricity. It simply facilitates the flow thereof. Yes, Arna, because that's what's reasonable. I can't go beyond the verify if you have $1 because that's too much. That would be overreach. Okay? Most kids, again. I explained this before. Maybe you were busy writing a Bible for me to read and you didn't hear me. I'm getting frustrated. I'm sorry. I'm trying not to be mean. Under my system, under this, the Nick Green checkmark smiley face system, yes, a kid, a 13-year-old boy, could steal mommy's credit card, input the information on Pornhub, use it to access the site, and jerk off to his heart's content. If he does that, the onus is now on the mother to check her credit card bill, see that there was a $1 charge to Pornhub, and go parent her child. It is not Pornhub's job to make sure that it's not a credit card stolen by a child. It is not the government's job to make sure that it is impossible for children to access pornography. It is the government's job to make sure people aren't intentionally exposing pornography to children. It is Pornhub's job to do their due diligence, which due diligence doesn't mean everything you can do. Due diligence means everything that is reasonable. If we all agree that it is reasonable that kids shouldn't be able to act, this is the brilliance of my system. This is why I like it. This is why this is how I would keep minors off my Discord server, in essence. If a kid steals your credit card and uses it to pay for illicit services, you don't then get mad at me that your kid got exposed to illicit services that you could have found out about at any time by simply reading your credit card bill. If you're too detached from the parenting of your own child to read your credit card and go talk to them about accessing porn with mommy's credit card, that's on you. I don't want to keep clogging up bandwidth in the game. You're getting more pictures, chat. Red, really? You fucking prick. There we go. Okay. Brushes. Size. Chat, I had a lot more to say tonight than just talking about the ideal way to verify ID to keep kids from accessing porn. I'm being so quiet right now because I'm trying to bring myself back there. Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm done talking about that. Alright, you have... you have like 45 minutes to an hour of me explaining it verbally while I play a video game, which I understand I'm not always the most coherent when I do that. Fine, cool, whatever. You then have 3 different degrees of charting and pictures and visual representations while I spoke much more coherently. If it's still not understood that I think porn sites have a greater duty to verify age than just a checkbox, but not a greater duty to have a foolproof, flawless age verification. We're gonna come to your house and fucking carbon date your skin. I really can't go beyond that. Like, there is a limited degree of responsibility that any corporation should have to protect their customer base. Okay? It is reasonable that Pornhub should have to basically check to make sure something that most children don't have access to isn't there. Okay? If a kid has a minor's bank account or whatever and uses it to send $1 to access Pornhub, and again, mommy and daddy aren't checking those bank statements, not being parents, it is not Pornhub's job to be mommy and daddy. It is not the government's job to be mommy and daddy. It is the government's job to make sure people aren't speeding through the intersection. Okay, this is perfect. It is the government's job to put up signs that say school zone 25 miles an hour and have police there who pull you over for going more than 25 miles an hour. It is the driver's side. It is the driver's job to see school zone, speed limit 25 miles an hour, and slow down, and drive slower and more carefully and watch for children. It is the parents' job to make sure their kids aren't playing in the street. It is the teacher's job at the school to make sure kids aren't playing in the street. If I'm driving through a school zone very carefully at 25 miles an hour and a kid somehow escapes his teacher's wrangling or his parents' wrangling and runs out into the street and gets hit by a car, that is a fault on the parenting, not me. The problem is, right now, as it stands, we don't have a school zone. We're not pulling over drivers for speeding in the school zone, in the street next to the school. And many drivers are just speeding on the street next to the school. So, I'm saying let's control the things we can, but still leave responsibility to the parents. Okay, it may not seem like it because I'm using words like government regulation and everything like that, but the duty of responsibility, the majority of the duty, the majority of the responsibility still lies with the parents. It's still their job to stop their kids. To parent their kids. That's all still there. I'm just saying let's put some more reasonable countermeasures in the way. Let's put the alcohol in its own special section with extra cameras so it's harder for kids to go in and steal it. Let's actually, check for some kind of physical ID at the counter instead of just going like, you're awfully short and cherubically featured for a 25-year-old there, Bill. That's all I'm saying. If that seems like too much to you, I don't know what else to say. I guess we just disagree on what's reasonable. Okay, chat. So, alright, I'm remembering. So getting back on topic. All this stuff, chat, this is basically what we've been ranting and rambling about for so long. This is the anti-porn platform. And my general problem with it is it's too extreme. People want to take the anti-porn platform and basically use it to start regulating art. And I feel like art deserves to be above regulation like that. Art should be protected. But people aren't necessarily making that easy on themselves. Games like First Descendant, don't get me wrong, love First Descendant to death, chat, I really do. But they've gone a little bit overboard with costumes and everything, and I can show you that in a bit. But they've gone a little bit overboard. They use skimpier and skimpier costumes, more and more lurid emotes and everything like that. That, like, it's still a game, don't get me wrong, but it makes me question... It makes me question, like this, like the bunny girl outfit, right? This is a bit much, you know? I get it, it's fan servicey, and that's kind of what the game was marketed on and everything. But, you know, chat, this is a bit much. It's just like, okay, listen, I'm all for free speech and everything, but this is not necessarily helping. Now, I'm not going to say First Descendant should be regulated or anything like that. I'm not going to say we need to ban these kind of Korean gooner games. But do we necessarily have to praise everything like this as anti-woke? The thing that particularly brought this to mind was Mecha Break. Mecha Break has a in-game club, you know, they call it like the lounge or whatever, and in it you can do dancing and whatever, but there's also like a strip pole, and there's no actual like stripping of clothing or anything like that, but it is very lewd, suggestive dancing in a game that already defines itself with lewd, suggestive character and costume design and stuff like that. That's the kind of thing where it's like, okay, is this necessarily something we want to start encouraging? I don't think it's anyone's place but us as customers to do that kind of thing, right? I wouldn't call on governments to come in and start restricting what sort of, you know, how lewd of character design you're allowed to have in games. I obviously don't support payment processors talking about that sort of thing. It's up to us as customers in our discretion to be determining that. And that's kind of... I don't know, it can be tricky. All I'm saying is we shouldn't be treating this all like it's a zero-sum game. Because it's not necessarily. We don't only have two options. Now, should we call for the cancellation of games like this? Games like First Descendant, games like Stellar Blade, games like Mecha Break? No, obviously not. But we should ask game studios, you know, we should be saying, hey, Western game developers, hey, CD Projekt Red, hey, Larian Interactive, listen, I understand you don't want to make Mecha Break. I understand you don't want to make Stellar Blade. That's cool. Could you make Tomb Raider? Could you make Perfect Dark? We can still have beautiful people and beautiful characters in games without over-sexualizing it. And I think we need to make it clear that we're not anti... we're not anti-beautiful people. Or, no. We're not anti-sexualized gooner games. We're just pro-beautiful people. That's all it needs to be. I don't know. I've talked a lot, chat, and it's getting close to when I said I was going to go to bed tonight. Because I have a super fucked up sleep schedule right now. I've just been having the hardest time sleeping. last night I woke up like 3 different times having an anxiety attack. I just really generally terrible anxiety. I don't really know what's going on. I think I'm trying some different health stuff of like adjusting my diet, exercising a little bit more, stuff like that to kind of try to affect my ability to sleep like that. Part of that is I'm taking melatonin and basically going to bed earlier than I normally would. Heavens, excuse me. But I hope this was a little bit enlightening for you guys. The crux of it is with everything going on with Collective Shout, Visa, MasterCard, the Internet Online Safety Act, YouTube, all that kind of stuff, and the responses to it, people are getting too extreme. Specifically we the people. Like I said, I've seen a lot of people advocating for getting back to Internet 1.0, getting back to the days of r/jailbait and stuff like that. Getting back to the days where it was more socially acceptable to be gooning to like minors and minor adjacent visual material and everything like that. And I don't want that kind of future. I think that stuff is morally and ethically wrong. I'm okay with that stuff being ostracized from the internet. I believe this is a case where we need to dig our heels into the status quo and say, no, we're fine where we're at. I think that is appropriate. So, if you're in the UK, I know it doesn't really make a difference because your government doesn't give a fuck about you. But if you're in the UK, you should speak out against the Online Safety Act and the way it's being enforced and everything like that. If you're in the US, if you're a content creator, you should speak out against YouTube for their plans of enforcing age verification. And everything like that. Specifically like the way YouTube is trying to go about it, or YouTube enforcing that upon American citizens. You need to speak out against Collective Shout and Visa, MasterCard, PayPal for collaborating with Collective Shout for the censorship and restriction of video games as a media art form, everything like that. I know I keep using that word, but I have to generalize a little bit. Chat, our freedoms of speech, it's corny, but freedoms aren't free, right? The way you keep your freedoms from getting taken away from you is you cry and yell and stomp and throw a fit and bite and scratch and make a scene when somebody tries to. Right now, our freedoms are being threatened. People are trying to take them away from us. So get out there. Make a fit. Call people names. Okay, point at Collective Shout and call them a bunch of sexless hags with dried ovaries. Okay, point at Visa, MasterCard, PayPal. Call them a bunch of tyrannical finance cucks. Unelected, tyrannical finance cucks. And say, we don't like what you're doing. Fight back. That's what I'm saying, chat. Fight back. Anyways, I'm calling stream there. Long stream. I have a very dry mouth. I'm gonna drink a lot of water. Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye, chat. Bye-bye.